so I'll get into, she talked a little bit about the bio, you're gonna see it again, but first, this is our company, Asset Protection Consulting. Always vigilant is our motto, so that kind of goes into what we're gonna talk about, being vigilant when you're talking about situational awareness. This is the different training that we offer through our company. We do firearms, hand-to-hand, active shooter and workplace, that's a big one. We do a lot of school stuff. We do CPR, the situational awareness. Full disclosure, I haven't ever did it for realtors before, but I did nurses and just different things like that. I have a daughter who is a college student, and I have a wife who's a nurse. So we talk situational awareness all the time. And then on the tactical side of it, really doesn't mean much to you guys, but I travel all over the country teaching tactical stuff. Anything from shooting to the devices that we use to get into buildings, ballistic shields, different things like that. So the other side of our company, we do security, so we do full on-site security. We only hire police officers. We don't have any civilians who work for us, or unarmed people. Everybody is a sworn law enforcement officer. So we do site security, roving patrols, VIP protection for dignitaries or important people, or if you just need a bodyguard for something, we do those type things as well. Traffic control, and then consulting on any type of security issues. So this is about me. This is the bio she's talking about. These are some of the cool people I've got to, over my career, do protection details for. Jewel, Blake Shelton, just a couple of them. Being at the track, I get all the celebrities. So I do all the VIP details for them. I've been a police officer for 23 years. I currently work for Speedway Police Department. I started my career at the Marion County Sheriff's Department. Before the merger in 2006, I went over to Speedway. So the rest of that stuff is all the stuff she's talking about. I've been very fortunate in my career. I've had lots of good opportunities to do different things, whether I worked in a warrant unit, narcotics unit, street crime unit as a K-9 handler. By far the best job I've ever had in my entire career was being a K-9 handler for sure. And then SWAT, team leader, I was a sniper, and then I've got all those certifications that she was talking about with all those abbreviated letters that nobody knows what they are. So basically it says that I'm certified to teach all kinds of firearms, hand-to-hand combat, ground fighting. I'm certified through the Federal Law Enforcement Academy as an active shooter instructor, threat awareness instructor, and then also I've been through the dignitary protection class in Virginia with the Department of State. So that's where the bodyguard portion of it comes in. So situational awareness is, it goes into our everyday, what we do, okay? As Americans, we get wrapped up in everything around us, but we don't pay attention to the whole environment we're in, okay? So with phones and technology and all these things, we just get locked in and we get fixed on it. So when we talk about situational awareness, it's just being aware of your surroundings. Like, look outside of the field of view of what's directly in front of you. So we talk about it from the law enforcement side a lot, is we talk about tunnel vision. So when we get into high stress situations and we start, whether it's we're chasing somebody on foot or in a car, and that stress level goes up, our vision tightens way down and it just pinpoints. So we fix on one thing. What we want to try to train ourselves to do is, when we get into a stress situation, is we want to actually see everything around us. So it was interesting, some of the things that you guys were saying with the stories and what you hope to learn and some of the experiences, like the squatters and things like that. Huge problem. It's everywhere, especially in Marion County. And the Marion County judicial system is not great, so it's hard to get people out and prosecute people and do all those fun things. So, the people that are in the houses, that's one thing, but actually the most part of what we see is they're just people that are hanging out with us, but they're not bad people. Somebody said, for the most part, people are good people. That's right. 95% of people are good people. So we tend to just ignore the people that we see every day or people we encounter unless they're doing something to draw attention to themselves. Most of the time, the people that we need to worry about are those people that are not drawing attention to themselves. weird people. Those are the bad people. And for you guys, I would think that the issue wouldn't so much be, yeah, the squatters could be bad, but it's more of a stalking type thing, or that confinement type thing, where they wanna try to be deviant in nature. Those are the ones you worry about. And there's really no identifying those people ahead of time. So we kind of talk about, like when I do active shooter stuff, I talk about, you know, how we prepare for it and what we can do with it. The bottom line is you can't prevent it from happening. It's not, you can't stop it, or you can't prevent it. Somebody's gonna plan it and they're gonna attempt it, but you can stop it once it starts. We hope that we stop it sooner than later, but when people, there's no way to deter people from what they're thinking. You can't do that. So seeing everything around you is important to keep your eyes open, and it all begins when you recognize that there's hazards and dangers that exist. And that's just what we're talking about. There's bad people out there. So the training for the encounter is be vigilant. And as we talked about at the beginning, is just always being aware of your surroundings. That's the biggest part of it. And allow your senses to be present. So if something doesn't feel right, it's not right. Listen to what your body's telling you. A lot of times your gut instinct is the right instinct. Just like when one of you got in the car and just left, like you knew there was something that wasn't right. That was your senses telling you, this is weird, most people don't do this. Pay attention to those things. Don't become complacent. That's a big thing. If we get into routines and we do the exact same thing, we train our body and mind to do that, and we will always do that. So even in high stress situations, that complacency is what we know best, and that's what's gonna happen. So you can't be complacent. You can't do the same things over and over. That develops muscle memory, and then that's what causes you to do those things when you shouldn't do those things. You just naturally do them. And then practice good situational awareness. You should come up with these ideas in your head and provide solutions to them. So you should be thinking about these things that obviously not in the moment. You want to think about it ahead of time. So like when you're sitting around doing nothing, you can be like, wow, if I was in this building over here, how would I get out of this building? You have to play the what if game. You have to do those things, and that's how you start coming up with plans that you can actually potentially act on. And then make decisions based on environments. So that's one of the things that we talk about is when we have that wider field of view and we see more things, being aware of what's your environment. So if it's like an inside attack or an outside attack, what's available to us if we're not carrying guns, we're not carrying pepper spray, what can I use as a weapon? How do I get away from this person? So those are all going to be part of the environment that you can use. And then along with the scenarios is like the what if game I was talking about is, drive around and look at properties and take it down. So the rule of the out, this is what we use when we teach active shooter stuff as well. Some of you might be familiar with the, I think some of them call it the run, hide, fight. So ours is just the out. So we're always looking for an opportunity to get out. If we can't get out of somewhere, then we lock them out. And if we can't lock them out, then we have to take them out. Then we have to fight. So that's the three things that we always tell people in workplace violence, active shooter, or just life in general. I yell at my daughter all the time when I ride in a car with her, which isn't very often, but she pulls right up on top of the car in front of her, and I'm like, if something happens, you can't pull away from here. Like, you have to have an out. You should always have a car length in front of you. Didn't anybody teach you how to drive? Hey, you talking? I'm like, So this is a quick little video, and some of you might have seen this.
9:54 p.m. A young woman is working out in the gym at her apartment complex. She is all alone. Then a guy knocks on the door.
It was just another Jew coming to work out, so I didn't think of anything out of that.
24-year-old Jocelyn opens the door for him. Then she goes back to her workout. 3 minutes later, it happens. He approaches and tries to grab her by the waist.
As soon as he was
Her social media is filled with her amazing feats of strength. Sure enough, he's exhausted. You can see him trying to catch his breath.
At the end of the video, it's like for her, I keep going, I keep pushing, I keep fighting. He's gonna stop, he's gonna let go, and that's it.
The assailant, Xavier Thomas Jones, was arrested the next day. Turns out he lives in the building in Tampa, and Jocelyn is being hailed for her display of true grit.
As long as you don't give up, you fight back, you show them that you are strong, that you are one, that you're able to fight back and survive and get out of a situation. I believe it's possible.
Alright, so, that video has a good example of a couple different things I'm gonna talk about in there. So, going back to the out, she was kind of cornered, and then she ran past the door. She had an opportunity to get out. She should have just left. She should have just ran out. But then when she couldn't get out, and there really wasn't anywhere to lock herself down because they were in an open environment together, then she tried to take him out. She fought back. Later on, when I get into another part of this, I'll talk about how she kept that bench between her and him, putting obstacles between you and other people. That's important. Distance is always going to be the best thing you can do. It's always going to be the safest way of doing things. And I know that with you guys, it's going to be difficult because you got to show people stuff, do things with paperwork and computers and iPads, and you get in that personal space. Ideally, I never want anybody within about 6 feet of me. That's like the ideal situation. And I know that a lot of times that's not going to be doable inside of a residence, but we'll talk about that. So she did a good job. And then one of the things that she said in there is, one, she knew she wasn't going to give up. So you have to have the will to want to fight. Back to that, most people are good. That means that most people don't think about having to hurt somebody, including a victim. A victim don't want to hurt someone because we're good people. But at some point when it turns into a fight situation where you have to defend yourself or somebody else, you have to have that conversation with yourself at some point that you are willing to do whatever you have to do. If that means hurting somebody, that means killing somebody, to protect yourself, that's a conversation you gotta have with yourself. And there's a whole mindset that goes into that. Okay, so the recon. This is for you guys before you go somewhere doing that background homework. The way Google is in the internet, you can find out just about everything about somebody. So between my case in Indiana and Google, you need to be like a teenage girl on Facebook. Like, you know everything. I call I'm an investigator. I call my daughter all the time. I'm like, hey, can you look this up on Facebook?
Instagram.
That's it, or TikTok, whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, help that out here. So there is so much information about people on the internet that it's scary. But you could get a good idea of who you're dealing with if you have somebody's name and date of birth before you even show up somewhere. My case, it tells you everything you need to know about people, as far as if they've been arrested, they've got tickets, they've been divorced, they've got all these things, it's in there.
Do you just look up by their name, or how do you?
Yep, so if you go into My Case Indiana, and you click on it, and you go down there and pull up a section that has first, last name, date of birth, and then there's a whole list. You can do citations, criminal cases, civil cases, you can look up wedding, like marriage licenses, everything in there.
So-
And you just click on it, and they give you a list of everybody, everything under that name.
But
So
not
for
mine.
us, we don't typically get like date of birth, so how do you recommend that
You
we?
can run it by just name,
Okay.
but the problem is, so say it was a name like Smith,
Right.
so you're gonna have to figure out
John.
which John
Yeah.
Smith had this happen to him. But eventually through all this other stuff, you can probably find somebody's date of birth, especially like from Facebook or something like that. Google Maps is really good to use for you guys to look at the properties before you go to them, or at least see an overview of the properties. I mean, you might have a great idea of where it's at and been on the street 100 times, but the overview will give you somewhat of an updated version of what the back of it looks like, if it's fenced in, what the street behind it looks like, what the house behind it looks like. I would definitely do all this stuff before you go. And everybody's got a friend that's a cop, ask them. We look stuff up for people all the time. Certain stuff we can't give out to people, but we can find certain information and we'd be like, hey, you need to stay away from that person, or hey, don't go by yourself type thing. And then drive by the location and take somebody with you and take videos and photos of it. Honestly, this is what I do on almost every single bit of this, is how I plan a SWAT hit. I do all that same stuff. So I'll go out and including taking the drone. We'll go out and we will Google map our route there, Google route our map back, Google our route to the hospital when my guys get hurt. We obviously will know every single thing that this person that's our target has did. We'll have the whole house laid out, the streets behind it, where we're gonna park at, the entrance, the exit, all that stuff. And you guys could do all that same stuff for the recon of where you're going to. So the plan. So we know we're gonna go meet somebody, so we have to plan for it. We did the recon homework. We know where we're going, how it's laid out from the outside, how we're gonna get there. So a couple things, share your location with your office, right? Or even if it's not your office, share your location with somebody you trust that you don't mind sharing your location on your phone with. There is ways that you can set up geofences. So basically, it's kind of like using your phone, like a lot of businesses use them now for like time cards. You can set a geofence through certain apps that show where you're gonna be, and your company can use that, and when you enter basically the satellites put a fence around the property you're going to, when you enter that, it'll alert the app and tell you that you're inside that. And then when you leave it, it'll tell you too. So as long as you're still pinging inside that geofence, people can look it up. There's all kinds of software out there that does that kind of stuff. It's almost like air tagging yourself. And then you can combine training and recon information to control the environment. So if you already know the layout of the place and where you're going, and then the timeline that you're gonna control, all these things, then now you own the environment, okay? So that goes back to the seeing everything ahead of time, that wider field of view. You can also have somebody call and check on you. I'm not big on having the phone out, but at least somebody could call and check and you could answer if you've been over that timeline. One of the things too that I should have talked about earlier is when you guys advertise yourself as going to show a house or putting your marketing out there, obviously you're salespeople, right? Like, you gotta put out all these pictures and your information. People need to contact you because they wanna go see this stuff. I would be real careful about how much stuff is public on websites. So it's one thing if it's a company site that, you know, is your company profile or whatever. I wouldn't get a lot into who you particularly are. Even phone numbers anymore, it's better to get like a Google number that you use instead of your actual cell phone number, because that information can also be looked up on the internet, just like you guys, I told you to look these people up, they can look your stuff up. Everything that I showed you about the recon, you are just as vulnerable to that as the people that you want to know about. So then when we get there, it's the arrival. So obviously if we can take a second person, that is your best option. There is always strength in numbers no matter what, right? At least somebody can call 911 for you if you're getting your butt kicked. So take someone with you. Drive the block. Don't drive immediately to the residence. Drive the block. Go past it. If you can drive the back of it, see the back of the house, see the streets behind it, that's all a good idea too. And then don't park directly in front of the house. Try to park a house down. Okay, that way you're pre-planning an escape route, and they're not gonna know exactly where you're parked at type thing.
You can eye on the person.
Yes. And if that's not an option, then back in the driveway. Somebody talked about that earlier, backing the car in, always a good idea. Problem with driveways is you easily can be blocked in. But hey, if you're okay with driving to the yard, I'm okay with it too. If you can get out of there, right? You gotta leave yourself an out. So those are all little tips about the arrival when you get there and what to do. So now we get there and we have to approach the house. So avoid looking at your phone. So many people are on the phone as soon as they get in the car, even though it's a hands-free state. they Bluetooth, right? Everybody's Bluetooth. But the whole time we're in a car, we're usually talking to somebody, and especially in your guys' world, setting meetings and things like that, it's from one location to the other that we're rushing to get one place to the other, and in between meetings, we gotta pick up kids, we gotta do all these things, and we're on the phone the entire time we're doing it. We naturally, as people, get out of the car, and we're still on the phone, and we walk across streets, we don't pay attention, because our head's down the whole time, we don't pay attention to anything. When you get there, I would end those conversations before you get out of the car, so that you can start seeing the environment around you before you can walk up to the house. The typical person that, you know, you see walking New York City, you see it all the time, people, they put it on the internet, people walking into traffic, walking into street signs, because they always have their head down, just paying attention to the phone. If you are using earbuds and you continue that phone conversation, use one, don't use two, be able to hear what's around you as well. Hands-free of bags and paperwork. I know you're gonna have contracts and flyers and laptops and things like that. I would use sling bags or backpacks. Try to avoid having things in your hands so that you can defend off if something happens. If you know you're going somewhere that you're gonna have to unlock the door, or you don't have it set up when you get there, then have the key ready, especially if it's dark. If you have a key with you and you don't have to go to a Realtor box, go ahead and have that ready in one hand. The key is also a good weapon because you can stab somebody with it, so. And then if you're going to nighttime showings, I would keep a small flashlight in your bag. When you get out of the car, have a flashlight in your hand. Good small aluminum flashlights are a good impact weapon too. You can strike people with them, so. And then have an escape route plan. So just like a route going somewhere, when you get there, look and have a plan of like what you're gonna do if you're getting attacked on the way into the house. Goes back with where we parked at. So then when we get to the meat, obviously if you can, you wanna walk the property before people get there, so arriving early. Always look for at least 2 exits out of anywhere. This should be just in life in general, the way that active shooter and violence is now. Like, I walk in a grocery store, I'm looking for exits. I walk in a church, I'm looking for exits. I walk in a school, I'm looking for exits. Always should be, it's just the world we live in. You wanna find 2 ways out of some place, always. So the first thing I would do is, when I walk that property, is I would be thinking, okay, if I'm on this side of the house, this is how I'm getting out of it. If I'm on this side of the house, this is how I'm getting out of it. And then never let the client walk behind you. So you should never let people walk behind you. This is kind of hard. I know with you guys when you're leading somebody and touring. This is hard for us when I do the VIP and executive protection details with famous people. We never want them to walk into a room first. We always want to be the first person in the room, because we don't want them to be surprised by a protester, an attacker, any of that stuff. That's really hard to control those people though, because if you're on a one-man detail, you always open the door for them too. It's hard to open the door and be the first guy in the room and tell him not to stop walking, or her to stop walking, because you're moving at their pace. Same thing with you guys as realtors. You try to tour it, but at a certain point, you let them lead, and then you give directions from the side, or open the door and then let them go in a certain way. Don't let them walk behind you. Same thing up and down stairs. Never let somebody walk behind you going up or down a set of stairs. And then avoid allowing the client to stand behind you at the door. So, like, when you go into a room, you want to be able to be the first person out of that room. So don't back yourself into a corner. Even though the walls are a safe place, you know nobody can get behind you. You got to have an escape route. So if you lead them to a room and show them something, let them go in first, and then you stand with your back to the door so that you have an escape route. We don't want to get deep into a room. And then keep objects between you, just like we saw in the video. If you're doing paperwork, if you can stay on one side of a counter, or they can stay on the other side of the counter, or use a table if it's a furnished place that you're showing. I know a lot of times when we fill out paperwork, sometimes we'll stand beside people and we'll do this type of thing and be like, sign here type thing, but stand across from them. That way you can put dividers between you, you can shove stuff into them, things like that. So the departure. So now you're done with your meeting and you're gonna leave. So let the client leave first, right? You want a small gap in there so that you're not outside together with them. Because if anything, now if something was weird and you finally got them out and you think they're gonna come back, you can at least lock them out now. So let them go. That also gives you an opportunity that you can look outside and make sure that they didn't wait somewhere for you. So if it's a 2-story, you can go upstairs and look out a window. You can look out the side of the house where you think it was dark and they might be able to be standing around trees or shrubs, things like that. You can view all that because once they go out, if you go out together, you're in the open, you don't have any way of getting back, you lock the door, and you've got yourself in this environment outside, you can't get to your car, you can't get back inside. So let them go first, that gives you a safe zone. If it's somebody that you got that creeper feeling about, I would take a different route home than the way you came. The most of the time, these people, if there is some sort of stalking or you have a special person that wants you to show houses all the time or property all the time, they are watching you. So I would start using different routes. I do that even as a police officer. My route to work and home is the same every day, but sometimes I switch it up just because I'm like, when somebody ever follows me home from work, just things I think about that shit probably. But you should always pick different routes. I know like 10 different ways to get to my house. So at the end of the day, it's an asset protection, but you guys are showing properties and things like that, but you are actually the asset, right? So the number one goal in everything is me, right? I go home. I survive. I don't care if I sell a house. I don't care if I wreck a car. I don't care about any of that as long as I survive, right? So we are the asset that we're trying to protect. With that, you have to train the mind and body, and you have to be determined to survive. That goes back to that warrior combat mindset we talk about, that most of us are good and we may have to do bad things. You have to train yourself for that. And then it goes into, besides just your hands, you should always make the job easier. So if I can get a tool to do something and I don't have to have that hand-to-hand with somebody, I can create that distance and use a tool. But if you invest in a weapon, you gotta train with it. So not everybody wants to be a gun toter. That's okay. I think you're wrong. I think everybody should own a gun. But there's plenty of things out there. Pepper spray, tasers, all those things are better than nothing. Those things are all developed to use at distance so that you don't have to be close to people. With fighting and protecting yourself, I tell this to women, I see it more with guys. Guys want specific techniques. They want to be taught, like MMA stuff. They want to get on the ground and ground fight, and they want to roll around and try to get each other to tap out, and they want to trade punches. Girls don't want to do any of that. They just want to win, right? And I'm all with that. So there's no fair fight. There's no technique. I teach thousands of hours of hand-to-hand fighting of police officers every year, and I tell them every single time that we start a training session, you are going to revert back to what you know, right? So when we get out here on the street, I can show them all these cool takedowns that we've learned for all these years practicing, and the first thing that anybody that ever played football does is tackle somebody. The first thing that anybody who ever wrestled does is they use some wrestling move, take them to the ground. And people who didn't play any organized sports or have any fighting background, they did the first thing that they did to their younger brother or sister. So it's just how they fight. Or if you've ever been in any kind of trouble growing up and you got in a lot of fights at school or whatever, that's how they fight. You always will revert back to what you know if you've never had any type of training to get that muscle memory. So with that, punching, kicking, clawing, do whatever you can. But if you do buy weapons, no matter what they are, you need to train with them. Get professional coaching on them. Don't try to YouTube it and figure it out on your own. So with the different types of pepper sprays, there's a ton of them out there. And actually, I had this conversation with Jocelyn. There's one that's called a pepper blaster, and it's actually a little pistol that shoots pepper spray out of it. And it's not so much that the pepper spray is gonna burn, cause it will, but the pepper spray comes out of it at 114 miles per hour. So that alone getting hit in the face is not gonna be cool. My daughter carries one at campus, cause she can't carry a gun on campus, so she carries one in her backpack. And it's pretty impressive. So there's different things out there that you can do to protect yourself.
What's that one called?
It's called the Kimber Pepper Blaster.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that, any questions?
No questions at all?
Best way to handle, you're going from one location to another. So sometimes you can't get there ahead of your,
Sure.
yeah, so.
And they're gonna get there before you, probably, if you're going from one to the other.
Yeah,
Traffic.
so you still have to go to the door and get the key out of the lockbox.
Yep. So those are gonna be like no-win situations, right? Because if they're there with you and you can't just be like, hey, I need you to wait in your car. They're gonna be like, what? So yeah, again, it goes into position. If you can turn and be more sideways to the door as you work the box this way versus put your back to somebody and your head down, you just gotta find what the environment allows you to do. I mean, a front porch may have a solid wall on one side, or if you're showing like a condo property, or maybe it has a shared breezeway, there might be walls there that you can put your back against, and work the code box. Yes?
So I heard that if you have like a lighter or something small in your hand, like you have to throw a punch, make sure to hold on to that so it reinforces your punch. And then I also heard that for women, if they have like wear bumpets, put like razor blades in there because if someone grabs it, it's
Whoa.
I did.
I told you she was smart, right? I told you.
So I didn't even know the bumpet was still a thing. I remember the ass scene on TV bumpet from years ago. I would recommend putting any razor blades in it, just because something happens, it could end up cutting yourself in the head. The thing about a lighter in your hand or whatever, that really doesn't change anything. People have always talked about, it used to be a roll of quarters, or you could put something in there to reinforce. The biggest thing is you want to keep a tight fist when you punch. You don't want a loose grip because that's how the knuckles get broken, things like that. You're not really reinforcing anything extra by having that, because that's not, the solid object isn't what's hitting them, it's the bone hitting them. Ideally, if you could carry something else to hit them with that you could swing, that's even better. Well, yeah.
with nails in it.
There was a guy that was making these things. They're basically like keychains, but they're made out of paracord, right? But in the end of them, he wraps a marble in it. So, and then attaches your keychain. So it's a tether about that long, but on the end of it, it's just got a marble wrapped up. And he makes them in like pink and orange, and my daughter's got one. And you can spin it, so you could hit somebody with it. It's got that hard marble ball bearing inside of it. So I know I got all these weird things I make my daughter have. I'm like,
Oh, my daughter's the same way. She carries knives. She has one in her car, one in her backpack, one in her pocket, one in her bra.
yeah. So yeah, any object, pins, because obviously you guys sign a lot of paperwork and everything. I would buy those metal aircraft pins. I carry one in my backpack for when I travel, and they're usually a little bit more expensive, but they're made out of aircraft grade aluminum, and you can stab people with them. So even when you're riding with it, you can just spin it over and stab somebody on the end with it. So so refills get kind of expensive. But, yeah, I carry a regular big throwaway pin at work, just because dirty butts are using it, and you're like, yeah, you keep the pin, it's something to do with this part. But yeah, so just different things like that. Anytime that you can attack somebody's face, that's what you want to attack to. If you can't see, you can't fight. Always attack the eyes. And obviously, kicking men in the groin is always a good idea too. So at least start there, get that distance. Any questions about anything?
What were some of y'all's takeaways?